So I'm recording this, but I'm still going to be interactive for those of you that are here, the studio audience. Is that all right? We'll still try to keep the interaction here. Although I have to admit, when I turn on the camera, it's always a little awkward. Because all of a sudden, I'm kind of talking to the camera. I'm talking to the people in the future here, which is decoupled production here, where I'm really talking to you here. Does that make sense? Okay, so we've already done the quiz. Go ahead, skip past that. I didn't show the quiz because if anybody sees this video, I have to take that quiz. Okay, on the last page of the article, there was an outline. Did you see that? I have right here some copies because I made some copies for my last class. And it was great to take notes on. Does anybody want any of these copies? Okay, so I'm going to set them right here. It's just basically the last page of the article. And it's the outline. I only did this because there's a lot of sections there in the outline. And I'm kind of today going to do it sequentially. I usually don't do the article discussion sequentially. I kind of move around a little bit. But today I'm going to do it sequentially because there's a lot of things there and I just want to kind of solidify each of those different aspects of it. So this is exactly the outline of what there was. If we run out of these papers, whoever gets it last can run up to 660 and say, hey, Professor Sampson asked me if I can take a half a dozen copies of this thing here. So if anybody wants this. But you already have this. Amy?
So I just have a question on the article. Well, I was just curious. So from the TAs, like they said that this was one of the most important readings of the year.
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting, like looking at the year it was published. Wasn't it like 1988?
Yes.
Something like that. It's like, has there been nothing quite as about servitization published since then? Because that's like, I would almost consider outdated, although like the information they said was like.
Yes.
I mean, yeah.
You know what?
Funny.
I am so glad you asked that question. So for the video audience, the question, in case you didn't get that, since this is a omnidirectional microphone, I put on right there. The question that was asked was, this article's from 1988. Isn't there been something better since then? You didn't say better, but you kind of implied that. You know, why did we do 1988? In fact, that's not the first time I've been asked that question. In fact, I'm glad. That's why I'm glad you asked this. Is the articles we study in this course? This one was from 88, the next one's from 1993. I have some other ones from 87, 88 that we're going to cover later in the course. Why do we do these articles? These were the foundational articles. These were the articles. How many other articles have been written on servitization since then? Just go online to Google Scholar and type in the word servitization, see how many articles come up. You know, it's going to be tens of thousands probably of articles. A lot of stuff has been done in this area. I actually had to dig to find the genesis of servitization, and it appears to be this article. These were the people that coined that term. And now, servitization has changed our society. You know? Diana Ross is servitizing. She doesn't know what it's called. If you ever meet her, talk to her about this, but she's servitizing. Okay? Does that make sense? So the articles that we're doing, I've been very, very selective. I mean, it's been agonizing even making the decisions about what articles to put in. Because they are the articles on which the whole discipline of customer relationship management has pivoted. And this is one of them. Okay. The most important article we're going to read this semester is going to be, in this course, is going to be the one for next Tuesday. The Norman and Ramirez article, that is the most important article we're going to read. If we can comprehend that, in fact, we're not even going to have a 30-minute think at the start of the next class. We're going to dedicate the entire class session to trying to figure out that article. Study it. Page 74. Read it 3 times. You'll be glad you did. I mean, there are some very important concepts in that article. Okay, so the outline you have there. If anybody else wants a copy of this and didn't get one coming around, just let me know. I can send Cord up to the department office to make some more copies of that if you want. So these were just the sections of it. I'm just going to quickly take you through each of these and kind of answer questions or address issues to maybe clarify this for it. I'm not always going to do this, but I'm going to do that today for this particular article. So number 1, on definitions, no definitions. As much as this is an important article because it's, you know, kind of foundational to this whole servitization movement, the one thing that I do have some contention with is their definition. Again, this article came out in 1988. It says, for the purpose of this article, we take the view that services are performed rather than produced and are essentially intangible, which was the dominant view back in 1988. These people were kind of naive, sadly, because they thought the services were intangible, which is just a bunch of rubbish. And the idea that they are performed rather than produced, you know what, everything's performed. Even auto manufacturing in, you know, in Akron, Ohio is performed, even though it's not an interactive, customer interactive process. Does that make sense? So, for our class, our view is the 21st century view, which is services are co-productive customer relationships. That's what it's about. Versus goods, and I hate that term goods, because even services have goods in them. That term that we call goods, and in the article they say refer to goods, really means customer decoupled production relationships. That's what it really means. Because again, even services have goods in them. Okay, so here we have a factory as an example. They are manufacturing little toy action figure dolls. Okay, is this co-production or is this decoupled? Decoupled. Yeah, it's very decoupled. Where's the customer in this picture? You don't know. You know, it's down the supply chain somewhere, and Walmart buying this thing after it's been through distribution channels and stuff like that. Okay, it's decoupled. Now this is the picture. You might have seen this before when I wasn't here in chapter 2. This is the picture where these people that work on this assembly line, as you can imagine, when they filled out their job application, what did they write? I am a people person. I like working with people. That's why they're on this line and not on the Tonka truck line or the Lego line or something else. They're people, right? Maybe? Maybe not? What about this? Assembling real people. Where's the customer here? Right here. Yeah. See? That's interactive. That's co-productive. All right. So where's the customer? That's kind of the key question. The key question that we ask is, where is the customer vis-a-vis the provider? You know, are they interacting or are they decoupled? That's kind of the overarching question. Okay, number 2, the move to servitization. What are the stages? You already said them. Stage 1, goods or services. Okay, so think about this. There's a company called Nvidia that makes video cards. When they make these video cards, is it co-productive or is it decoupled? Decoupled. Very decoupled. Where do they make them?
In Korea somewhere.
We don't know. Do you know that? You're making it up.
I'd assume, but
we just assume. Yeah. Does anybody have a Nvidia video card? Yeah, okay, you do. So maybe you know this, but probably in Korea or
I don't know what
we don't know. It's decoupled. Okay? Versus Netflix, which is kind of more interactive, right? See, Netflix, you request something, they give you something, they keep track of what you requested, they start trying to push you to buy other things and watch other things, which is interesting because I don't have a Netflix account, but my son does, and apparently my whole family uses it because it's loaded onto my television at home. So on some rare occasions, I'll actually go log in to the Netflix thing because my wife and I want to watch something, and I'll see what it's like. Do you want shows like this? And it's like, are my kids watching this stupid stuff here? You know, it's like, because it gives you stuff that's kind of like what you watched last time. It's like, no, I don't want this stupid stuff. Give me some oldie stupid stuff from like the 70s or the 60s. Okay, so that's goods or services. So back in the old days, it was like, oh, are you a goods company or a service company? Again, false dichotomy. Then stage 2 is goods and services. So that's where all of a sudden we realize, you know what? The reality is every company, every organization has some combination of decoupled and co-productive. Okay? Even newspapers have a co-productive element. It's called throw it on the driveway. Huh? So Nvidia, for example, they started this thing called the streamer. They servitized. Streamer for games. So that as you're using your Nvidia video card, it's actually taking that data, the video that you're watching, and streaming it to someone else. Which I cannot figure out. I mean, it's bad enough that people don't go over to the soccer field to play soccer. They get online and play soccer like that. It's even worse when they don't even use their fingers to play soccer. They're just sitting there watching somebody else play soccer on their video game. What the heck's with that? I don't know. Okay, so that's stage 2. Goods and services which realize that, you know, there's some composition of this in any organization. Then finally, stage 3, we have the goods, like the video card. We have the services, like the streaming thing. We might also have support. So now, if you're having problems configuring your card or getting to work with some game, they will now interact with you and help you do what you need to do in what we're going to call later your process domain. You have knowledge. So now Nvidia has this thing like game strategy thing and the GE Force Experience and Tegra Zone, you know, where now you can go learn stuff. And I actually think, in my view, I think every organization should be in the business of customer training. You know, meaning in the process of what we do, we try to help our customers be more knowledgeable in the ways they interact with us. It makes us both more jointly productive. Okay? And finally, self-service, this idea that now we're going to have some things that we do that really don't require direct interaction, but the customer can come and interact with our technologies, for example, through our website. Huh? Isn't that cool? So it's kind of this broader portfolio. Okay, this is a bundle. The article called it a bundle. The term I want to give you, and I want you to know this term, is an SST. Does anybody know what that stands for? Supersonic transport. It actually does stand for supersonic transport. That's not the one we're talking about here. It stands for, or no, did I say SST? Forget that. Okay, rewind the tape here. Okay, cut. Take 2. A PSS. Sorry. I'm going off today a little bit. What is a PSS? A product service system. That's what they call these things in more recent literature. But you know what? These authors really define what now we commonly would call a PSS, a product service system. Okay? Number 3, customers are driving servitization. The article says previously the focus was on customers' needs and satisfying needs. What's wrong with that? Our goal is to satisfy customer needs. I mean, who can argue against that? What's the new goal? What do you think? What did the article say about, this is in section 3 of the article. What is the new goal? This servitization model. Please, Jason?
To satisfy customers' needs with their own inputs.
Yes, excellent. So involving the customer, good. Any other thoughts? I like that. Any other thoughts? What is it now? What have we been talking about here? As we servitize, what are we changing? What lever are we shifting as we servitize or deservitize? What do you think? Please, Katie?
You're starting a relationship with them.
Yeah, we're changing the relation. That's exactly what they said. Now the emphasis, excellent comment, Katie. And this was good also, Jason. Now the emphasis is more on establishing and maintaining a relationship, a co-productive. Now, in this article, they didn't say co-production, and I think co-production just really became popular after 1988. But it's a co-productive relationship between the corporations and their customer base through broader offerings. Now, this broader offerings, on Tuesday, we're going to give it a name. I'm going to tell you the name now, so you can be sure, and as you read that article for Tuesday, that you can make sure and highlight that, or if you're doing it online, I don't know, do you highlight? I think you should still highlight online. The name for that is density. Density. So we're going to talk about density on Tuesday. That's the very important article that we will study. Some more articles to discuss. Okay, any questions about that? Please, Katie?
So it mentioned multiple times that the customers are the ones that are causing this, which
Yes.
I have a hard time believing, because I feel like, yeah, some people like forming this relationship, but most people don't.
Yes.
So I don't understand how that's customer driven. If the companies keep adding features and things that are more often than not seen as hurdles, not helps,
Yes.
why are we driving that?
That's a very good question. So in fact, there is a dark side of customer relationship management. And I'll tell you what it is. I'll tell you, in fact, I'll tell you it off my phone here. Just a second. Here is the dark side of customer relationship management. Give me just 1 second here. I have to change my folder for my email. And the dark side is, well, Sundance, that's actually I asked for. It's all Crowd Compass, I don't even know what that is. IBM Conference, Wells Fargo Online. It's all the spam that I'm getting from companies that want to form a relationship with me. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
You buy any product these days, they say, oh, send us your email, you can win a prize. It's like, oh yeah, great, the prize is you're going to clog my inbox with a bunch of spam. See, you're right. That's the dark side of customer relationship management. What customers are asking for is more value at lower cost, which is part of the value equation. They're asking for more density. So when it says that the customers are motivation or they're demanding it, they're not really demanding servitization directly. What they're demanding is more value, more convenience. They don't want to have to drive over to your stinking bank. They want to be able to access the bank on their phone. Does that make sense? So when they're asking for more servitization, it's basically saying they're asking for denser offerings, which means more value. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That is a very good question. Thank you for asking that. Any other questions on this? Okay, so it's basically they're saying it's market driven. And the point of this from Caden's comment is, it's not like companies come to themselves and say, hey, you know what? We're doing pretty well at what we're doing now. Let's go move into a field that we know nothing about. No, that's not what they're doing. Let's go jump into something that's precarious and destroys our cost structure. No, that's not what it's about. It's more a customer saying, you know what, if you don't servitize, we're going to start going with the competitors. I think that's going to happen in the newspaper industry, for example. If you don't servitize, we will just abandon you and we're going to go with Google News or Facebook News or something like that. Okay, as a competitive tool, there's a whole list there that the article gave about different ways it's a competitive tool. That's really why we servitize, is we try to position ourselves in a way that we can provide value that's not just the same as everybody else. Maybe it's lower cost, maybe it's more rich interactions and things like that. So I gave the real estate example that fits that. Is that the reason you want to servitize is because now you're being encroached by low-cost providers, and so what you're going to do is servitize so that now your customer needs you more. Again, the denser offering. Does that make sense? Okay. Number 5, servitization is changing competitive dynamics. The dividing line between traditional manufacturing class and service companies is becoming less clear. Not that it ever was really clear. Companies are competing with new and unusual rivals. Who are they? From the article. The list of like half a dozen of them. Who are some of the new rivals that companies are all of a sudden competing with?
Themselves.
Themselves. Well, actually, let's look at this. Number 1, themselves. That's what it said. So, IBM, for example, cloud services. So, you know what IBM Cloud Services is? It basically says, don't buy any IBM equipment, just use our equipment. It's destroying their sales. Instead of selling servers, you should use IBM servers. C'est la vie. But see, IBM says, hey, if they're not using our servers, they're going to be using Amazon servers or somebody else's servers. So we might as well let them use our services. edX, this is an interesting example. You know what edX is? It's different from Mr. Ed, the talking horse. edX is actually an online, free university that is sponsored by Harvard, MIT, Berkeley, University of Chicago, and so forth. You can basically go take Harvard and MIT classes for free, online. Huh? Are they competing against themselves? You know what? They're actually competing against everybody else, all the other universities, and what they believe is, well, the students will go do that online, but the best students will want to come pay our exorbitant tuition. Stuff like that. But isn't that interesting? They've actually gone into competition against themselves. Okay? Competing against their customers. If any of you use like Pearson MyOM Lab or MyLab things, see, they're saying, instead of just selling you books, we're going to manage the whole learning and education process. You know, we'll do the quizzes for you, we'll provide the interactives kind of stuff like that. See, they're servitizing it. Rolls-Royce a number of years ago decided, hey, you know what? The business of selling jet engines to Boeing or to Delta Airlines or things like that, it wasn't really doing as well for them as they wanted, so they moved to a servitization model that they call power by the hour. So if you fly on a Delta jet, that jet is likely owned by Delta, but the engines are probably owned by Rolls-Royce. And they just lease them to Delta by the hour. And Rolls-Royce is responsible for all the maintenance, they're responsible for all the repairs, they're responsible for all the uptime and things like that. Does that make sense? They've servitized. They've gotten out of just manufacturing engines into actually operating the engines and such. Their suppliers, there's lots of examples of that where companies will come in and start producing things that will compete with supplier products, Netflix originals. Every member a janitor, huh? Okay? You're competing with your suppliers. All of a sudden you no longer need varsity cleaners to come in and clean your buildings, because now you're just cleaning it yourself here. Other industries, Apple, Google Pay. Okay. Finally, back to strategic basics in a few minutes here. What is strategy? We're going to cover that more in chapter 5. It really is about what business we're in. So some of the questions that it asks, and we've kind of looked at that today as we looked at different examples. What business could we be in? See, these are like the fundamental strategic questions. What business should we be in? Should we be more service or less? I mean, if you're a real estate agent today, or a news reporter or whatever, you got to be asking yourself these questions. You know, what business should I be in? Should I be closer to the customer? Should I be further from the customer? Who else could be in it? Who else is going to be in this that we might be concerned about? What business do we want to be in? Where are our competencies? Okay? So these are types of issues as we continue in the course that we're going to be kind of recurring themes, which is, what is the optimal way we can design our relationship with our customers? When is more service too much? That's the concept of deservitization. Now, the article didn't say anything about deservitization, and frankly, I made up that term. But you will find it online now. Deservitization is the opposite of servitization. It is when you move away from the customer. So, examples, banking. In my day, you went to the bank to cash a check. Now, take your phone out, take a picture of it. It's deservitized. Stockbrokers, you know, I traded some stocks, I worked on some of that yesterday. I just sit in my home on the computer or whatever. I never need a call. I talked to the stockbroker when I opened the account, that was it. Travel agents, education, and such. So we shift from personal interaction to self-service technology. Does that make sense? So that's an example. Do you understand? Servitization, move closer to the customer, more co-production. Deservitization, move away from the customer, less co-production. Servitization, we'll talk about that later. Well, actually, let's see. No, we don't need to do that now. And we're out of time. Do you have any questions before we depart? Please.
Is servitization always going to add more density?
Hopefully, if it's done right, it will always add more density, but also deservitization can do the same thing. We'll expound on that next class session. Good question. Amanda?
What would servitization look like in a business-to-business relationship versus business to customer?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. It's actually going to be quite similar in business to business. When we get to chapter 4, we're going to actually address that issue. It turns out that business to business has some different dynamics, but a lot of the same concepts, meaning that we still try to integrate, as we servitize, we still try to integrate and be more involved in the customer. The main difference between business to business and business to customer is responsibility for resources, whereas to the customer, they're often responsible for their own resources, whereas in business to business, they're agents representing the organization. Good question. All right, if you have other questions, bring them next Tuesday, and have a great weekend.
Yes.